Well, in Australia, they're just coming to the end of summer. And of course, it's COVID-free. We all want to be in Australia. But of course, apart from that, there's always good reason to go to Australia to learn about innovation in the convenience and food industry. And that's another good reason to be there today, live from Melbourne with some great guests. So let's bring on the first of our guests. I'd like to welcome someone who's also a good friend of mine and co-host for today, Brett Barclay. So Brett, perhaps if you could join us.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
No, very, very, very welcome. Now, Brett, you're obviously you're kindly co-hosting today. You're with Convenience. Tell us a bit about yourself, Brett. You're with Convenience Measures Australia, but you're also on the AACS board, aren't you?
I am, yeah, and that's been going. I've been on the board since 2008, so I've been on there for a while. And as you mentioned, so Convenience Measures, so we market research and benchmarking. So we set that business up in 2016, and they've been doing it ever since.
Very, very good. Now, as I said, you know, obviously, you had the advantage of the climate over us at today. It's 9 o'clock in the evening. It's lucky we didn't do this on a Friday, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You probably would have caught us, or we would have all been in bed if you had done it at your usual time. So we appreciate the change of schedule for us Aussies.
No, our pleasure. Now, I mean, everyone obviously who's watching, 23 countries registered for this one, would love to get a bit of an overview of what's going on in Australia, Brett. And you've got some slides, so you know maybe we could have a chat about that with you now.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. Thanks. And again, thanks for the opportunity. I know we've got some great retailers that you're going to speak to after me. And so I wanted to just give a bit of an overview of what's sort of the convenience in Australia. And certainly for those that have probably been out here, have seen, I suppose, over the last probably 10 years, that the channel's really moved in leaps and bounds. And, you know, we're now a channel worth over $9 billion in sales, 7,000 stores that we've just clicked over. And interesting, you know, those that have come out here as well and seen here, you know, $9.69 is our average transaction, which is quite high. But obviously, the Australian dollar, your labour costs are high, so you know, in relative terms, it sort of fits in. But we certainly have migrated away from fuel, and I wanted the next chart in particular highlights that. And so, you know, in 2010, you know, our foot traffic to convenience stores was plus 50% were fuel only. And so, you know, that's what we were known for. We were very much driven on, I suppose, the US type of convenience outlet where it was all about fuel and the shop was sort of secondary. And I suppose, you know, 7-Eleven were the key where they started to develop their shop only format. And certainly that's been, I suppose, the instigator nationally that we've seen foot traffic from a fuel-only perspective to decline to less than 40. But our foot traffic numbers outside of 2020 were up and have continued to rise each year. So if we had hit COVID in 2010, this channel would have suffered. The positive out of I suppose, of COVID is that, you know, we saw a 10+ decline in fuel numbers in 2020, but we saw a double the growth in 2020 versus 2019. And those numbers will be released in about a month's time. But you know, the reality is we survived because retailers have invested heavily in their formats over a number of years, and we've benefited from that last year. So COVID, you know, you don't wish it on anyone, but it was sort of a blessing because it actually showed the convenience, the format, and the amount of income or the money that retailers have spent on their formats over a long period of time, and it came to fruition in 2020.
So
in terms of
the channel,
sales,
and this is pretty well positioned. Has been pretty well positioned then, Brett. Really for this. Obviously, it didn't know it was coming, but well positioned.
Yeah, and it's the next chart just shows you why, because the growth has been. You can see the growth charts. You know, 2017 was obviously a tougher year, but generally between 2% and 4% in a mature market. But you can see the growth is coming out of food and beverages, and that's where the focus has been. You know, we were quite a immature market in terms of food. You know, it first came to the UK in 2006, and you could see the food offering then, and I thought, geez, we're a long way behind that. And you know, we're certainly seeing that jump significantly, and different types. And again, you'll see two retailers with very different food formats, and both successful because they're understanding their customer. And you know, we've had, you know, good solid growth and continued good solid growth in those categories, and it did get impacted. There's no doubt in 2020, But with COVID impacting, what we saw was a very, very significant change in shopper behaviour and what customers were coming to buy within convenience stores. And it probably caught everyone by surprise. We'd rationalised over a number of years, like grocery sections and paper goods and the like. And that certainly we went more to impulsive type products. But 2020 brought out that shopper that just came back, and they were looking at convenience stores for that. And we had I suppose Coles Express were probably one of the retailers that benefited from that, the link to the supermarket. As you know, EG bought the old Woolworths business and it sort of migrated away from that Woolworths sort of setup. But the retailers were quick to react to that. And we certainly, outside of stock issues, there was certainly plenty of those at the height of COVID, but we reacted really quick to that. And, and that came through in the numbers. And in fact, in the back half of 2020, our growth rates were as good as what I've seen over the last 10, 15 years, which is outstanding.
Yeah, just one question on that, Brett. Obviously a lot of retailers have in different markets around the world have had some similarities of experience with what you're just showing with this chart demonstrates it very well. How easy is it going to be for convenience retailers to hang on to some of that business, do you think? Will those behaviours stick is the big question a lot of retailers are asking us.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see what's stuck. I suppose there's things that we didn't think would stick that have stuck, which is amazing. And categories like hot coffee, which have been our fastest growing category for the last 5 years, suffered mainly because of the workforce, and that's not going to work, working from home. Actually, we lost a lot of that white collar shopper in that sort of second day part. So the tradies and the like, which are heavy consumers in the convenience channel in Australia, they were still strong, but they came off. The white collar came off a little bit, and that's where the impact. Now, as they're starting to go back to work, as you said, that the market's reopened. In Victoria, which was the longest lockdown of anywhere in the world, 75% of the workforce is going back. Now, it's not back. Don't get me wrong, it's going to take time, but it is slowly going back. So things will change, but I think what some things like groceries that we all thought would probably drop off but they haven't dropped off to the level that we thought. And I think this is one of the other things that came through as well. We did a COVID study for ACS, and the trust of the channel was quite strong. And again, that didn't come about overnight. We didn't build this in 3 months of COVID. This was built over a period of time. People just didn't interact with the store, and then so once they got used to it, they wanted to do less shops. Our trust was higher than supermarkets, which was an amazing achievement, because that's why I think some of those things have stuck, and people are certainly still shopping locally more than what they ever have. So I think that's going to stay around for a while. How long, I'm not sure, but certainly from a perspective of where we're at, it hasn't bounced back to where that I think retailers sort of might have gone back to.
Well, I'd say, great piece of research to ask that question. And that was with the chart that we just see, I think very, very just got my attention completely when you sent it through yesterday, in terms of that consumer confidence. And I'm sure you're right. It will help it that those consumers stay with their behaviors, won't it? I mean, just drilling down into why, obviously more qualitative, why that there is greater confidence. I mean, we've got some ideas about that as well, but what would you say that, the reasons why the channel has performed well in the confidence, if you like, category of behavior?
No, I think early on, a lot of retailers, and credit to the retailers for doing this, they got on to, shields, so screens. They had a lot of COVID processes go into place very early on. They jumped on it. They didn't wait. And so, when they put screens in and they started to put, sanitizer in, people got confident about going into store. And obviously there's generally less foot traffic in a convenience store. And I think people were quite surprised. I mean, even the advent of hot coffee within the channel, milk used to have a challenge of use by date. Well, that doesn't have that challenge anymore, because you're basically using loads of milk for your coffee. So it's supporting it. So things that freshness and that have benefited, and I think people got confidence in that because they could see it. And the ability to, as I said, it would have been diabolical for this channel 10 years ago with the foot traffic drop off. I mean, there was points when we were all in lockdown where fuel was down 60%, yet we were still seeing the category or the categories within store had dropped off, but they were never anywhere near 60%. They were 5-6% down, and then as things started to normalise a bit, came back, and even though fuel still declined last year double digit, to have growth in the channel just is showing that confidence within convenience.
I mean, funnily enough, just before we move on, in talking to some retailers in the UK this week about this very issue, and they've said very similar things to what you've just said, Brett. But I guess one of the things that one particular retailer said to me was, the consumer, obviously the UK experience with COVID has been very severe. So these things are perhaps more emphasized, more important, even more important here in the UK market. But the consumer obviously has been very concerned with controlling their environment and what the if you like, the risk tolerance that the shop is going to sort of create for them. And obviously with the convenience store sector, you can see into the store, what you're getting into before you go in, you're quickly in and out. It's much, there's going to be less human interaction in that store than in an unpredictable situation in a supermarket aisle, should we say, so in a way, the convenience sector has had some real advantages, and there's been a big shift to the convenience sector, in terms of shopping trips. So it's, it's partly just how it's built, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And you're right, that footprint, the size of the store, it doesn't allow for, heavy foot traffic, and you're never going to get that. I know Angus could tell you that some of these stores at 7 a.m. in the morning in the CBD, they're the size of a shoebox, but they've got 30 or 40 people in them at the peak, lining up for coffee. We haven't quite got back to that, obviously, in those CBD areas, but in general, most stores are bigger than that can cope with the foot traffic. So
makes sense. Well. Makes sense.
So the next stage was just, I suppose, the evolution of convenience. And, as I said, I think the major retailers have led this, and those that know the Australian market will know that David Jones is sort of a premium food offer. They had a joint partnership with BP, so similar to the M&S type offer. And BP obviously very fuel orientated, has migrated. They've got 31 stores in the market with plans to sort of get this up to about 80 sites nationally out of about 310. So a fair chunk of their business through this, where it's very heavily focused on food. You can see that the flowers there. David Jones is a strong brand, although ironically, their performance of their own food halls hasn't done quite so well, but this seems to be going well for BP. But it gives credibility. I mean, very hard to sell roast chickens in a convenience store, but they've done it quite well. It's got credibility. So, having these types of offers come into the market gives convenience stores credibility across the board.
No, superb. I mean, just Brett, sorry on that. I mean, David Jones, just, I guess for Marks and Spencer's globally, for BP globally, the issue is trying to replicate BP M&S in lots of other markets, and looking at what David Jones can contribute there on food to kind of credibility and quality of offer. I haven't been in the store, but it really delivers, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And, as I said, I haven't really touched on, what the guys are going to talk about themselves, but they've got some great formats. And again, we're the leaders in food as well, and they'll talk about their amazing formats. This one, it looks like a Woolworths site, but it's actually an Ampol. It's or a Caltex as it was known. It's now known as Ampol. But Woolworths have got a partnership with Ampol now. This is a small format style store. So Metro is Woolworths small format. And they've introduced this in the convenience stores. And again, these stores give credibility to convenience. It's not, it's very different, this type of offer. EG bought the Woolworths network here, and the Woolworths network was a pretty ordinary network when they bought it. It had been run down. It was very much just fuel orientated. EG went out and bought Oliver's. They put that in store, again, gives credibility. Oliver's is a reasonably strong brand. So it's done well. So they're trying to give credibility through a second party, or a third party, I should say. And then they've just formed a relationship with Pizza Hut as well. I wanted to touch on this because anyone that's been to Australia and been to Adelaide would know, OTR have done a fantastic job in that market, and their store formats have been, they've been right up there with the best in this country, and a lot of independents have caught up on that. It's probably one of the most competitive markets, because the next slide is ex-convenience, and they've done a great job in creating that competition in the marketplace, and with their partnership with Mobile. And you can see that's a convenience store, and that's totally different to what you would have seen convenience. And that both of those, OTR and ex-convenience, are both independent operators. And Hayden will come on and talk as an independent operator, but there's other independent operators in this country that have invested a lot in their stores, and this is the sort of benefit that the channel is now getting. Is that
very interesting. So many reasons to go to Adelaide now, not just for the wine, eh? It's. I mean, I've luckily enough, fortunately, been to visit Yasser a few times and always been very impressed. And as you say, ex-convenience, provides a even more competitive dynamic now, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it would be. It'd be one of the most competitive. I mean, all markets are competitive, right? But you see these two going at it. It's great. It's great for Adelaide. Seeing what they're doing, and OTR has started to expand a bit outside of South Australia and into Victoria as well. So they're looking for growth, and that's great. It's great that their independents are growing. We've got a strong major retail business, and we've got a strong independent business, and I think that's healthy for the whole channel.
Very good.
Yeah. So then, for me to finish up on just a couple of things, I suppose the emerging challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we've got here is government regulation. As you know, e-cigarettes have been, this is just one of them, but e-cigarettes have been a successful entry into convenience stores pretty much around the world. But in Australia, the government continues to ban it. They're allowing nicotine into Australia via a doctor and a pharmacist from October this year. So we're still out of that market, which is, that makes it hard because, we've got tobacco companies talking about, helping people quit and obviously moving into this e-cigarettes, which is perceived healthier. It's obviously not healthy, but perceived healthier. Yet we're restricted by that. And that's a threat for our channel. Tobacco is about 40% of our total turnover in store. And so, if e-cigarettes does take off and we're not allowed to sell it, it makes it a challenge. And for those that haven't been to this market, we also can't sell alcohol in convenience stores, which is certainly, again, another government regulation, although, it's something that we see as, again, an opportunity, two very big opportunities within convenience. So it's a threat. And the last one, I suppose, just to finish on, and I've done a bit of research, is the whole EV element and what that'll mean. And I know we're less reliant on fuel, but in that fuel space, we've got no real competitors, whereas EVs creates the competitors. So this is Dan Murphy's, which is currently owned by Woolworths, and this is their car park with an EV station. McDonald's have just put EV stations in as well. Bunnings, who I know weren't successful in the UK, but we're a very successful business in Australia, could certainly put EV stations in their stores, and that's a competitive threat. And we know, having done a bit of research on it this year, understanding that essentially car makers are being forced into by the UK bans, and Japan have now come out the same, saying no more combustible engines by 2030. That's going to have to happen in Australia. So we've got to be prepared for that.
Yeah, no, good point. It's interesting to see Japan also go for that quite aggressive 2030 deadline, which is obviously making big waves here in the UK because, it's not very far away.
No.
That's the point. You're right, Brett.
Well, Volvo just announced only on Monday that they're basically all Australian cars are going to be either a hybrid or EV from now on. So they're basically going to stop making combustible engines. So I don't know too many Volvo drivers, but
I mean, just one point on EVs before we move on. I mean, I guess we spent a lot of time studying Norway, but every market has its own unique characteristics, if you like, that will replicate. So the replication of Norway isn't going to be exact, is it? It's going to be a bit different in every market, partly depending on where the regulation is and decarbonisation timetable, if you like.
And Australia is certainly the evolution is certainly down at the bottom. But you'd imagine there's going to be pressure to come on at some point to sort of catch up, and we've got to be ready for that because the car makers are going to be forced into it by global. So Australia doesn't make or manufacture any cars, so we're going to be forced into it no matter what. Yeah,
no, great point. Well, Brett, obviously we're co-hosting for the rest of the program, so should we invite on our first guest, and really delighted to welcome Angus McKay, who's of course CEO. 7-Eleven Australia. Angus, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, one of the operators that everyone wants to come and see when they visit Australia. So delighted you can make it today.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
So, just I guess off the slides that you recognise a lot of the things that we've just been that Brett's been taking us through in terms of the market. I mean, anything particularly? What did you think about the point around the sort of the level of confidence that the sector gives to the consumer versus other formats in terms of the comfort factor?
Yeah, look, so a lot of what Brett just said, I completely agree with. We've certainly benefited from that and experienced that over, I'll just keep it simple, the last 12 months. I think COVID prompted a whole lot of things that were very old and also some really new stuff. The very old, as we went back to local, like around the world, we've had no choice, whether it be lockdowns or restrictions on travel, all those types of things. We had to survive locally. So therefore, the confidence to be able to go to a local store and acquire what you needed played right into the hands of certainly the convenience sector that were able to, pass that product to customers. I think the other thing that then occurred to the other end of that extreme is we had probably 5 years worth of digital development in the space of 12 months. So, basically, if you weren't enabled, you were toast. If you were enabled, you had to rapidly work out how to be more and more and more enabled. So those two things have pulled very hard at that notion of convenience. And I would argue that, the most convenient thing a customer can get is they get whatever they want, whenever they want it, where they want it. So that just plays to the strength of either locality and or a home delivery model. And then I think the last part that sort of really came into is at the height of COVID, none of us wanted to be in crowded supermarkets or in crowded spaces. So somewhere where you go and get what you need and then call it escape to the relative safety of the outdoors it just played to those strengths. But as Brett said, we don't know where this now goes. That's the key one. There's a lot of stuff happening right now that might say this is a little stickier than we might have thought, but it's still pretty early days.
No, very, very, very good point. Now, obviously, we'd like to be there in Melbourne visiting your stores, Angus. We can't do that, but you're going to show us. You're going to show us a few visuals, aren't you? And I guess talk us through some of the things that you've been doing down there.
Yeah, look, I thought Dan, I'll just touch on three things. So firstly, just talk a bit about COVID. I think what it was like for us, and perhaps for those people listening around the world. This does nothing else other than to probably just say, guess what, guys? It's all the same, no matter which market. We're all going through many of the same things, a bit on digital and a bit on food and formats. So just quickly on COVID, I mean, we adopted, I suppose, our own response, focused on the customer, focused on our employee, but equally, given we're a franchise business, had to focus on the franchisee. So up front, there was every country, every store, there was that moment of just gasp, shock, as you suddenly started to have to balance sheets, make sure that you could stay in business and then work out where this thing panned out. Brett's already covered from a convenience perspective. That was thankfully a fairly short shock, but we had to make sure that our store owners felt that we were going to be behind them the whole way through that. Like everywhere, screens, masks, you couldn't pay for sanitizer at places, new processes. We had governments changing the rules by the moment. One of the unique parts around Australia is we have many, many different states that tended to operate as completely separate governments over the course of this, and therefore trying to juggle a national business across different jurisdictions played havoc. Our supply chain was brand spanking new. We'd adopted our own DC structure. So that frankly came out of the gate very strongly. We were able to supply stores every day with what we needed, and even when you couldn't find a roll of toilet paper for love nor money, we were able to actually secure quantities of that and actually provide that into our stores. Big shift. So tens and tens of thousands of people that used to go to a CBD location, guess what? They all went home and stayed home. So juggling CBD now versus suburb, everybody left. And even if I look around the country today, and I jumped on some planes last week and the week before, the CBD areas around the country are still pretty quiet relative to where they used to be.
Right.
But if you go to those suburban hubs, maybe if I use the expression, the suburban high street, they're absolutely thriving. We then sort of had to deal with lockdowns, stand-ups. So you learn to be pretty agile in that sense. How do you just keep balancing those things? But where we now sort of find ourselves, and that image that popped up before, that's a picture of Melbourne CBD from only a week ago. So you can see it is still really quiet in some parts, but CBD is really a challenge. Our suburban networks are absolutely flourishing, which is just cars. There is a bucket of them still on the road, just none of them going into the CBD, and a lot of them, I'd say, just doing a lot of shorter trips. And at the moment, all of our states are still playing in slightly different places. The question you could ask is, did COVID ever touch them? And then other states like Victoria, which is where I'm sitting at the moment, as is Hayden, we only had a lockdown some 3 weeks ago. So, sort of a little more near and present in that sense. But the big learning out of COVID really is, that the customer's digital journey, it accelerated exponentially in a really, really short period of time. And that obviously for good retailers, your journey as a retailer accelerated quickly. Otherwise, you pretty much found you were out of pocket. So from a digital perspective, just to give you a bit of a flavour of what we've been doing, we launched an application called My 7-Eleven. It's sort of a single app that allows you to actually play right across our store network. So that allows you, and I'll cover it in a minute, to lock in fuel prices anywhere in our network. And effectively, if you want to say play the futures market on fuel, so you can lock in a price today and redeem it in 7 days' time. That saves people literally hundreds and hundreds of dollars a year. A bit of gamesmanship goes with that. But we took an old app, put it into this new My 7-Eleven format. There's a loyalty application behind that, gives us the ability to actually play with our customers, communicate with them digitally, and then now opens a completely new realm of digital for us. And I'll get into a bit of that in a second. If we jump to the next chart, one of the things that we all wanted to do during COVID was we wanted to play with our local post office or courier company. We all experienced that wonder of, I ordered it a month ago and I still haven't got it. We launched a thing called Parcel Mate, which allows you to effectively send parcels from any one of our stores to a home or an office or whatever it might be, but equally for a very, very cheap rate, you can send it from one store to another store. So, with a network of some 720 stores, that gives people, a fair bit of reach, and that's gone off brilliantly over that cycle. The next two charts then talk a bit about sort of mobile payment. So, one of the things that we've done is we've launched a store or 3 now in Melbourne whereby, no need to go near a cash register. So 7-Eleven, like many convenience stores, the queue is your enemy. The last thing you want to do is stand behind 2 people in a queue. Most people spend about 90 seconds in one of our stores. If that goes out to 100 seconds, they get pretty grumpy. So we're giving people that opportunity to actually pay on an app and completely bypass the queue. And that's something we're expanding across our network and pioneered in one of our stores in Richmond. I'll show you some pictures of that in a short while. But mobile payment is obviously, again, one of those things that has been accelerated.
Really impressive, Angus. Has there been a lot of consumer and customer enthusiasm for some of these developments? Fuel, locking in the fuel price. I know it's a huge issue in Australia, isn't it? I guess for the consumer, and also this is very impressive. I think what you're doing here.
Yeah, no, look, the consumers are loving it, and they're quite happy to be experimented on. That's the other thing. They've worked out that you don't have to be perfect. You can constantly tune things up, which has been great. If I didn't just jump to delivery, which we acquired a business called Tipple a few years back, which is an alcohol online last mile delivery business. During COVID, we stood that up as a delivery vehicle for 7-Eleven. And are now arranging that across our network. So, you pick the window, whether it be 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 120 minutes, you can have everything from a cup of coffee through to a meat pie delivered to your home. The stunning part for me is the basket size out of home delivery is nearly 4x what our store basket size is, which is just remarkable, in terms of what customers want. And that notion of convenience has really started to play out. If I sort of then just jump now a bit just to quickly to format, just to talk a bit about what we're doing in that space. This is our Richmond store, so this lives underneath our office. This is completely cashless. There's no cashier here. There is a concierge in the store who helps you find your way around what is only about 65 square metres. You could say that's a little indulgent for our customers, but you can sort of see a very different look and feel, very much all around catering for the food occasion for an office-based community. If we jump to the next slide, you sort of get a slightly different perspective on it. Coffee is king in our stores, office workers coming in for that $1 cup of coffee, and everything Brett said about coffee and that journey that we've had over, the last 5 years has been stunning. But, our offering is moving more and more and more towards food, and we put coffee, certainly high-class coffee, as part of my stable diet. This is just an image of a store we've got in Brisbane. It's actually on the 23rd story of a skyscraper, uniquely servicing a number of call centre operations within 3 floors of that building. So it's a 7-Eleven, is bespoke for their own business. It's, I suppose, stocked and run by one of our local stores just down the road, but completely bespoke, completely cashless, that allows people that are actually office bound, if you like, to pick up food in particular during their days, given, by the time they get from the 23rd floor down to the local cafe, etc., they've probably lost half of their lunchtime. So an example of where we're trying to experiment.
Very, very, very innovative. Brett, any questions or comments from you?
I suppose from my perspective, I think what Angus said on digital is we saw a lot of the data that's come out of the banks saying that, the cash, people aren't shopping with cash anymore. And I think that as Angus said, everything's been fast-tracked, 5, 6, 7 years. And I think that was more, as Angus said, you've got it, you had to be in it. And if you weren't in it, you're playing catch-up now. And so I totally agree. And I think, 7-Eleven were at the front of all that and for many years. And I suppose you get the benefit out of investing in that sort of platform. And COVID, as I said, it sort of hit. I mean, I always used to carry cash. I don't know when the last time I went to an ATM. And I think, I started to pay with my phone, even in the watch. And I think people are migrating more towards that. And I think it's going to be the future. And I think cashless, there's always this skepticism around cashless. It doesn't have, labour, you're not going to pay someone. So, but as, if you've got stores that people are prepared to go in and go and buy product and get out, in and out without having the issues of queuing and waiting for things, then that's what people want. That's convenience.
Yeah, Brett. I mean, I agree with you, Brett. I mean, just on the delivery point that you talked about, you mentioned Tipple, Angus. Is Tipple? So I didn't quite catch it, but is Tipple owned by 7-Eleven, or is it? It's a third party you work with?
So we've got a majority ownership. There are some minorities in there who are the founders and dare I say the brains trust behind it. And we bought into it. One, alcohol is something that we're very interested in within convenience, and Brett touched that before. But we still are a bricks and mortar retailer, and we wanted to learn from people who are just digital natives, and the commingling of knowledge has been stunning. Our ability to help them be a better online retailer has been great. Their ability to help us understand how to use digital technology to be a retailer has been fantastic. So a real meeting of minds.
I mean, it's quite a good example for the rest of the industry globally, I think, in terms of what you've done with Tipple, because obviously one of the big concerns in other markets, if you like, is if you like not having any involvement with it just being disintermediated is the word, isn't it? And I mean, you're not only you've avoided that, but you're also you're learning from the whole thing, which is obviously fundamental, isn't it? So that's, I think, a very interesting case study there you got.
Yeah, it is. No. Hey, look, so let me I'll hit my last couple of sizes quickly. This is just the outside of one of our newest stores. So we very much still believe that even in the midst of a pandemic, we should be opening stores. This is one opposite the main railway station here in Melbourne. A very different store, by and large, completely food inside this store. Already going through the roof, even though volume of traffic in Melbourne is still down by some 20%. The next couple of shots just give you an idea of, if you like, it is a food store. So whether it be the traditional sort of, pies, but also sandwiches, sushi, salads in there as well. You can see that, we're well and truly catering for.
I think we've just. Can you hear me, Angus?
And as you can see, still we have all the wonderful fun and games with the internet where things drop out. This is just an example. Everybody wants bottled water. we're moving obviously to be more responsible in the way we do that. So rather than exclusively selling PET bottles, we're giving people the opportunity to fill up with their own product called the Well.
Very interesting.
And then the last piece is just really around, in spite of some of my colleagues who are the carnivores in the business, we put some plant-based options out there. And now I'm really popular because I am a vegetarian, and I have my own range within the store, which is just wonderful. Even better at selling. So there's just some examples.
Yeah, and is that doing well? Is that doing well, Angus, in sales?
Yeah, we're all out of the cupboard. It's fair to say, Dan. All the vegetarians are coming to sell now.
I like that. Yeah, excellent.
So look, our business is done well. It's been great. It's been a pleasure to be a part of it.
Oh, very, very good. Well, Brett, I'm sure you join me in thanking Angus for a terrific overview. Yeah. We're bang on schedule, we'll move to the next segment. But first of all, Angus, I think some great innovations there, and I guess luckily you've been working on some of those things for some years, and you were ready for a situation in which they really came into their own, I guess, is the sort of my summary of what you've just said.
Yeah, look, I think that's fair, and a little bit of luck didn't hurt along the way as well.
Great, Angus. Well, look, please, if you wouldn't mind muting your camera and just carry on watching, if you're up for that late in the evening, your time. And thank you, Angus. So, Brett, just before we bring Hayden in, I mean, when you talked about some innovation in the Adelaide market, you talked about the dynamism that we're finding in Australia, and I think Hayden, if we could introduce him now, is a great example of that, isn't he?
He is. I mean, I've travelled a few times around the world with Hayden, and he's brought back a lot of his learnings, and I tell you, his offers step change dramatically. We talked about how he started and where he is today, and I think he can tell the story, but it's an amazing one as well.
Welcome, Hayden.
G'day, everybody. Good to see you all.
So we've all been looking at, obviously, we're about to see some pretty exciting images to showcase your offer. I mean, and we posted them on LinkedIn over the last few days. Big reaction. So where's the passion come from, Hayden? Where's this passion? How's that developed? What's your story?
Well, Dan, I guess I do very much enjoy retail. And probably my own selfish interest. My job is largely traveling around the countryside, going from service station to service station. So why not have a food and coffee offer and service station offer that you actually enjoy being in? So that was pretty much the root of it.
So show us what you've done, because I think it speaks for itself once we start to see some of the visuals. Sure
thing. So yeah, a little bit of a story to go where we are or how we've begun. So I run about 31 BP and Shell branded service stations in, I guess, the southeastern corner of Australia, in the states of New South Wales and Victoria. Most of the towns that we operate in have a population of around, say, 2,000 to 20,000 people. Some of the towns that we do operate in are larger and have populations of over 100,000, but they're generally smaller towns. So on to our next slide. Traditionally, or for a very long time, our sites have actually had food and coffee offers. I guess you'd probably say what we sell is probably the traditional Australian takeaway. It's egg and bacon muffins for breakfast, burgers for lunch, and fried food pretty much for the rest of the day. Given we run in these smaller regional towns, we haven't had to generally compete with the likes of the big quick service restaurants like McDonald's or KFC's. And that has really helped us establish a very popular offer within these markets. And,
well, Hayden, just on that point, and we had a chat the other night, and you made the same point. And we've seen the same in Ireland and the US market. In the US market, there's a business called Cases, which are a huge player in the US market, and they're in small towns where there's no QSRs, and they've really had the room, the space to grow, if you like. And in Ireland, Musgrave have done the same thing with Centra, so it's just interesting to see that going on in Australia as well.
It's a real opportunity for us. We find that I guess people like nice stuff, to put it very simply, and our offer it's a really good offer in these smaller towns where we can be the nicest cafe for 20 or 30 Ks around. Hence we branded ourselves Bowser Bean, and that was to call out our great food offer, and also probably help our customers differentiate our offer from other service stations, help customers identify, it's a Bowser Bean. We know the food's good there. We know the coffee's good, so we'll stop there. I guess coming onto our fit outs though, I guess Australia has a booming coffee culture. We take our coffee very, very, very seriously, and it's a very diverse and well-developed cafe market. And I guess, probably so much so, for example, Starbucks has really struggled to get a good foothold in the Australian market because it is so well dominated by so many great cafes. So to help communicate to our customer that we take our coffee very seriously and we have a premium coffee offer, we actually fit out our service stations as if they were premium cafes. So you walk into one of my service stations, or cafes more accurately, and you see various seating formats, hand wash stations, or we call them Bowser basins. As Angus had before, we've got the free sparkling water on tap, customer Wi-Fi, and workstation seating. So it's a very comfortable environment to enjoy, to sit down, enjoy your food, or just a bit of my time while you wait for your coffee, and then you can get about on your way. So basically, we like to think of ourselves as cafes that sell fuel.
Well, Brett, you must be a fan and a customer, right? When you're on the road in and around the Melbourne area.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've popped into a few. I go to drive to Hillsville quite regularly, and love getting up in the mountains and go past Hayden site. And I think, one of the things that's quite different to say the 7-Eleven model is the 7-Eleven models are often prepackaged, easy to consume or easy to purchase and consume. Whereas I suppose Hayden's targeting a very different audience there, where he's actually inviting people to come in and sit down. And I think we've got a lot of that. We spent a fair bit of time in Philadelphia, and it was one of the things that I think stood out for you, wasn't it, Hayden? The Philadelphia site, and how they really Rudders, how well Rudders have done in terms of they're really catering for that person on the go. They had big sections of seating, and I think that a lot of that came from that. And you brought it back, and I think he's done an outstanding job. Understand again, as every retailer should, they understand their customer. And if Hayden tried to put in a 7-Eleven offer, it may work, but the likelihood is that it's quite different. So you got to understand your customer, and I think that's what they've done really well.
Very impressive.
No, I agree with you there, Brett. We do try to appeal to a regional market, less so than a metro market, and I think that having a bit more room to play with that in the country does help us as well there.
Very good. I think we're going to go back to your slides.
Cool. We also, our promotions are generally centred around our food and coffee offers. For example, very popular one for us is the $5 Burger Wednesday, where we basically offer our entire burger menu for $5 on a Wednesday, and it's every Wednesday. And it's the same burger that we'll sell Monday through Sunday, but we get a lot of extra traffic through. And in some of our smaller towns, it's quite viral. And, we can be feeding a big portion of that local population every Wednesday. They're coming in for our burgers. And that's great. Another value driver we use is our 4 coffees for $10 deal. And that's barista coffee. And that's encouraging, I guess, our customers to shout their colleagues and their workmates a coffee on the way back to the office or work site. It's a great thing, creates a great interest in what we do, and creates a good atmosphere at our sites.
So I guess, not only does your product obviously look good, you take great care about the photography and the images and how you communicate it. And obviously that lends itself to social media locally, doesn't it? And those things are all connected, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, look, social media, I think we're relatively new to social media, but as is our customer. Not as evolved, I think, as their metro cousins. And so it hasn't been that hard for us to put up what they see as an exceptional offer.
Very good.
And we'll just bump on to the next one. The comments and sentiment from both Brett and Angus completely spot on to what we faced, although slightly different being regional. But the pandemic did hit us, we were very fortunate to continue to be able to trade, but we had to adapt, and we had to adapt very quickly, often with minimal guidance or the goalposts changing every other day.
Yeah.
So I think, as Angus touched on, we were very quick to ensure that we had our staff in face masks, installing the Perspex screens, sanitation stations for hand washing, and just in engaging, I guess, heightened cleaning protocols. We were also, I guess, going onto that digital story, is we were actually also able to use our in-store screens to communicate messaging to our customers and staff much quicker if we'd just been using traditional printouts or mail even. So that did change how we used our in-store media almost immediately.
Great point.
We did actually change up our offer a little bit too. We did actually do some take-home packs where customers could actually purchase the raw ingredients of our products. So our very popular burgers, they could actually buy the base ingredients and take them home and cook them for the family at a later time. And we did actually start playing more in the online delivery space as well. Again, being regional, online ordering like Uber is quite a new concept. So we're very quite new to that. But as Angus touched on, COVID definitely accelerated that. And also in other markets where Uber drivers aren't available, or third-party delivery systems aren't available for us, we've actually used our own delivery system. So we actually have our own delivery car delivering burgers and such as well. So it's like Angus did say, it has encouraged a very rapid response, and what might have taken 5 to 10 years happened in 5 to 10 months.
Well, you've been very busy. You've been very busy, Hayden. That's very clear.
Yeah, it's been a fun time. Admittedly, a lot of that time has been spent probably laminating, cutting, and sending out point of sale material as well. But it's been a busy time. We've learned a lot, and we've adapted quickly. And then I guess so. Social media was great for us during COVID. It kept us able to send our message, bring our stores into our customers' laps. But we'll also continue to use, I guess, pardon the audio. And I guess also what you can see in the bottom right-hand corner is a drive-through. And finally, actually, that's our new coffee events machine. So probably giving you guys a bit of a glimmer of hope of what's to come with summer. That little combi is going to be travelling the countryside, selling coffee and spreading the Bowser Bean message.
Well, I think that's a terrific image to finish a show about Australia, really, isn't it? Because it's heading to the beach, which is what we're looking forward to here. We're a few months away from it. But any last comments from you, Brett, before we thank Hayden?
Yeah, I think having known Hayden for the last, especially the last 5 years, and having travelled a bit, what he's learned, he brought a lot of overseas learning into the market, and I think it's a credit to him for what he's done, because we were saying probably he would have been in that 10 years ago bucket where if COVID had hit 10 years ago, he would have really struggled. And so developing the offer the way he has, and understanding his customer, I know he listens to what we're saying about customers and the like, and he's learned, and social media, that's been something he's developed as well pretty quickly and got it up, which is for a regional retailer, I'd say they're generally behind the times, or behind the 8 ball with social media. So he's done well to catch up.
No, I mean, we often hear these stories, don't we, about how travel leads to innovation, leads to sharing, leads to innovation in other places. I mean, it's maybe you found out some of those things on a NACS show plus a US trip. I don't know.
Very much so, Dan, and it's one of the reasons why we're here today. It's fantastic to continue to see what's going on around our country and around the world.
Well, really grateful, Hayden, for you being prepared to come on late on a Thursday evening and share your remarkable story. And good luck to you. You're going to be very successful with what you're doing. That's obvious to me. So thank you, Hayden, for taking the time, and to you, Brett, for co-hosting this episode. Love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, no, pleasure. Thank you, Dan, for the opportunity.
Thanks, guys. Thanks to Angus as well for joining us from 7-Eleven. Angus, thanks very much. Brett, Angus, Hayden. Let me just tell you guys what's coming up next week. We remorselessly continue with Shop Talk Live next week. Rather than one particular geography, which is what we've done over the last few weeks, we're focusing on global, and that's with a brand that makes a lot of sense for. Spa International. Spa brand is in 48 countries. So, very much a global focus. We'll be looking at a number of case studies from different spa operations around the world. And we're going to be joined by the Managing Director of Spa International, Tobias Wasmut, and Gary Harris, who's Head of Design at Spa International. Interesting image here with one of their NACS International Convenience Retailer of the Year award wins. They've won it a few times. This was a store in Gran Canaria, Spain, which I have very pleasant memories of visiting. Very innovative retailer. It will be a terrific program next week with those guys. So looking forward to that. Thanks very much for joining us today, and have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.